And joining us in studios 8 and 7, a resident political analyst, Fiso Mahlangu, and the representative of the Zimbabwean community in the African Diaspora Forum, Ngabuto Nicholas Mabena, the spokesperson on ZANU-PF, Kennedy Mandaza, and the spokesperson on the MDC, that's Robert Kutumeka, and Johnson is from the African Diaspora Forum. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. And as always, the lines are open on 011-542-2186, or you can join us on social media as well. Let's just start with what EFF leader Julius Malema had said in contradiction to what he had done in singing praises for Robert Mugabe, seeming like a double speak. Or is this just the nature of this, the beast, that politicians are double-minded or speak in twisted speech, as it were?
Well, good evening, Cindy. It would be considered that politicians speak in coded language, or they always invest their future into speech. But this one is like none other. Mr. Malema had a scathing attack for President Mugabe. We have not seen that in the past. This attack particularly lingered on President Mugabe leaving office. Mr. Malema iterated that the president is too old to hold office. He cannot slap anyone across the face, as if any president should do that anyway. But he couldn't even hold a spade by hand. And he was too old. And the statement by Mr. Malema was that it's time to go, Grandpa. In the past, Mr. Julius Malema has often praised Robert Mugabe on excellent leadership. Although you remember, he doesn't have a good relationship with many of the SADC leaders. As it is, Mr. Malema cannot enter Botswana. And this last attack, even against President Mugabe, was a show of a different ideological pattern. Perhaps this side leaning more to the DA. In the past, he sang praises. At one point in time, Mr. Malema said President Mugabe was the only revolutionist in Africa. Sort of like a mentor, if one can say, and he's visited him a few times. But yesterday, he rendered that President Mugabe must exit office and that is too old. And he closed his segment on President Mugabe to say, I know that you're going to respond and you can say what you want about us, but you must leave. It's time to go. So it shows that he has drifted from the ZANU-PF ideology, that which he favored and loved for so long. He called it his training ground. But it shows, I think, a different politician in Mr. Malema, and perhaps the beginning of a turn and the beginning of an antagonistic situation between Mr. Malema or the EFF and President Mugabe or ZANU-PF.
Now, we know when bulls fight that the grass gets affected, and especially when it comes to politicians. There was a response from ZANU-PF with the utterances of Julius Malema pertaining to foreign nationals. Again, it pains me to say Africans are foreign nationals, but in the context, for simplicity, that the Pakistanis, the Nigerians, the Zimbabweans are essentially here to take the jobs of South Africans, and in a sense, almost evoking xenophobia. Do you get that sense as well, whenever there's comment made on Zimbabwe, that there is a tendency to want to infringe on the sovereignty of how things are done there? Mr. Mapen.
Well, I think let me first respond to what Mahlangu is saying. We don't believe, in our view, that what Malema said yesterday demonstrates some kind of shift ideologically, that from ZANU-PF. What we see Malema was getting entrenched in the secession battles in ZANU-PF. You have a faction caused by the name Generation 40, G40, which its members include Kaskuere, who has been a friend, a comrade of Malema. As we understand, they are now at loggerheads, probably some business deals that went sour in Harare. He's now been persuaded to enter into Timla Costa secession camp led by the Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa. You will know that the independent candidate, Mliso, has been going to Europe telling everyone who cares to listen that Mnangagwa is the best person to lead. That Mugabe should step down and hand over political power to Emmerson Mnangagwa. And this is exactly what Malema is said yesterday or is doing. He is now parading himself as an international spokesperson of the Emerson Mnangagwa faction within ZANU-PF. Because if you then check what he then says, he believes that there are young people in ZANU-PF who should lead Zimbabwe. In our view, the struggle in Zimbabwe is not against an individual, Robert Mugabe. It is against the system. The system that is so entrenched. The system, you will know that we fought against colonialism. We fought against imperialism. And even today, still it raises its ugly head. We need to locate the Zimbabwean problem. During the liberation struggle, the split in the liberation movement. How did the liberation movement split in 1963? It was influenced by the imperialist forces. You will know that the leaders of the splinter group in 1963, Herbert Gitebo, who started in Britain. You will know that Reverend Dabaning Stoli, who started in the United States. You know that Leopold Dagawira, who was working with the British intelligence at the time. Because it was during the Cold War, and ZAPU, the authentic liberation movement, led by Joshua Nkomo, had an alliance or relationship with the Soviet Union. So what the imperialists sought to do was to weaken the liberation movement, hence the creation of ZANU in 1963. This is the ZANU that went on to win the elections in 1980. You will recall that Andrew Young, the American diplomat then, celebrated the victory of ZANU in 1980, saying it was a victory for Western powers diplomacy because the victory of Mugabe actually stopped, in his words, the influence of the Soviet Union in Southern Africa. ZAPU, the ANC, SWAPO, they were in an alliance. ZANU, PAC, they were in alliance. All these created by the imperialists. As we all know, the imperialists are only interested in the economic interest of a country.
Babuma Bena, before we go any further, just to clarify as well, so you're saying that the system is endemic, that our conquerors or the colonialists are essentially the puppet masters still in everyday politics, and these obviously is not information that is out in the public domain. I just want to bring Mr. Johnson into all of this, how the politics in itself plays out, especially when we see leaders that either overstay their welcome, also creating the impression that they are power hungry. If you look at what happened in the Gambia and wanting to loot the state, it feeds into that narrative that there's nothing wrong with Africa, it's the leadership thereof. So when we hear what some might think is a conspiracy theory, but which is conventional wisdom, that there is forces externally from Africa that want to influence a regime change for their own interest, what do ordinary citizens do, especially when you have the power of the vote?
Yeah, thank you, listeners. It is a pathetic situation. Absolutely, is the issue of leadership. That is actually the problem in Africa. On this particular issue now, I don't see Malema as doing a paradigm shift from the former support he has for Mugabe, but it's a paradigm shift within the inner circle, like the last speaker explained. Generally, ADF, African Diaspora Forum, believes that no leader, for no reason, should stay beyond his welcome, beyond his mandate. Like you mentioned, Gambia, we rose against Gambia. We did representation to the government and ECOWAS, and we scored some point there. And we believe that continental, regional organizations should be able to unseat any leader who is overstaying his welcome. And coming to Southern Africa, we should expect that by the next election, if what happened during Mugabe Sangarai era happens again, that SADC soldiers should be forceful, like the ECOWAS, the ECOMOG army did in Gambia. So we in ADF, we believe in holistic democracy. We don't believe in chop and change. Whatever the internal wrangling, why Malema is turning coat against his former allies is personal. He just wants to be the spokesperson or cash in to the new growing wing opposition within ZANU-PF. Not necessarily, but what we're asking for is total change. If ZANU-PF loses election, they should go out of seats. If they win this election, let them stay. Let them be legitimate. We are not dictating for countries or trying to chop and change the democratic principles and constitution.
Yeah, but the will of the people must prevail. Sorry to interrupt you. We have callers. John in Cape Town, thanks for your for calling in. Good evening to you. And Sepiso, we see you as well. Hi, John.
Good evening, Cindy.
Good evening.
I don't really think Malema changed his support for President Mugabe. I think we are taking him out of context. I think what he said there is Mugabe has overstayed, but we don't hate the man. If he did really hate the party, he was going to say Mugabe must go and we need to do a regime change. But he said we still have people who are very, very capable of leading Zimbabwe who are in ZANU-PF. So it's not a change of stance there. But I mean, let the truth be told. At 94 years old, the old man must slow down, do his personal life, and give over the power to someone else in the party. That is exactly what Mr. Malema is trying to say. So if we are saying regime change, and he's still saying let the ZANU-PF have the power, but not Mr. Mugabe, I think he is being fair enough. But if he overstays the way he did, then it's not good for Africa, it's not good for democracy. This man is being imposed in his country through the ZANU-PF cowards. So he must go and let the power flow to the next generation, so that he's setting a precedent in Zimbabwe that if you finish your 2 terms and you are old enough, give it to someone else.
John, thanks so much for your call, calling us from Cape Town. Sepiso and Zeres, thanks for your patience. Good evening to you.
Thank you very much, Cindy, and how are you, ma'am?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Cindy, there is no permanent friend in politics. So to the permanent speech, as leaders changes, because we understand that in Zimbabwe, democracy has been replaced by dictatorship. So we have to invite, the organizations like African Union should be disbanded and replaced with organizations like ECOWAS, because the African Union are too soft for Mugabe, and the Zimbabweans are suffering, and they have a lot of fear for the old man. So the old man should rest in peace politically. Thank you very much.
All right, Tepi, so just a reaction from you, so especially when it comes to the philosophy or ideological stance of EFF towards ZANU-PF. This seems to me now more like posturing and being opportunistic with whoever will be taking the reins from President Robert Mugabe.
I think it's a far stretch to call the president the greatest or the greatest freedom fighter of all time, and to then in the next breath say he should go. Whether or not there's a deputy within ZANU-PF is not relevant now, because every organization has a president and a deputy. Even within a post-Mugabe situation, there's going to be a president and a deputy. It is up to Zimbabweans to vote. It's up to Zimbabweans to stand up for their nation. Mr. Malema's comments were very straightforward in saying it is time to go. He has overstayed his welcome. He has destroyed that country. I think those statements are very clear. A freedom fighter whom you love, you cannot in the same breath say he has destroyed a country. There is an ideological difference. We've seen it in South Africa within the speakings of Mr. Malema, and he does not go with the ideology of ZANU-PF now. Perhaps maybe the deputy in a later stage, because there are no permanent friends and no permanent foes in politics. But there is a great difference in ideology at this point. It is up to Zimbabweans to rise and to attempt to build that country. It is easy for us to say in the 2018 elections, if Mugabe does not win, the UN forces should come in and pull him out. It's not that easy, particularly when we are talking from from South Africa. They've attempted that. The MDC has attempted that. It's never that easy. You know, it's not as transparent and as free as we have elections in this country. So, you know, there's a need for further engagement for Zimbabwe to come back on the road. We can say all the rhetorics we want and speak of elections as free and as independent as we assume they will be, but that's not the reality of how things are happening in Zimbabwe.
All right, let's invite Obert Guchu, spokesperson for the MDC. Thanks so much, Mr. Guchu, for your time. Analysts saying that essentially things will remain the same. The status quo will hold for as long as there isn't reform and primarily with more intense engagements to ensure that Zimbabwe returns to true democracy. Your view?
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers. Let me just start by saying that Julius Malema's statement yesterday should really be viewed in its proper context. We in the MDC, we are convinced that Julius Malema is still a die-hard sympathizer of Robert Mugabe, the person, and the ZANU-PF regime in general. What he was simply saying, I believe, is to say that at the ripe age of 93, soon to be 93 next month, President Robert Mugabe has seen better days, and he did make reference to the video which went viral, where President Mugabe was having difficulty holding a spade at a tree planting ceremony a few months ago here in Zimbabwe. Clearly indicative of the fact that the old man is too old to remain in power. So to the extent that Julius Malema did make allusion to the fact that Robert Mugabe is too old to remain in power, we do agree with him. Look, in the MDC, it is not our mandate. It is really not our interest to be caught up in the factional infighting within ZANU. Within ZANU-PF, it is now beyond debate that ZANU-PF is crumbling, that there are at least two major factions in ZANU-PF, but that is none of our business. As the MDC, we have simply been saying that the ZANU-PF regime should ensure that there are electoral reforms that will make it possible for free and fair elections to be held in Zimbabwe, elections that will give a result that is legitimate, a result that is beyond contestation.
All right, Mr. Guchu, I'm sorry to...
2008,
yes, I'm sorry to break your word. We're out of time, but just a quick response from Mr. Kennedy Mandaza, spokesperson for ZANU-PF, just in your reaction in statements released saying that Julius Malema is effectively just being opportunistic. He's trying to gain political mileage in the country by calling for Robert Mugabe to step down.
Thank you very much and good evening. As a revolutionary party of great maturity, ZANU-PF will not stoop that low to engage Julius Malema the way he does our party and our president. But what we wish to remind him is that a leader who was democratically elected cannot step down based on the numbers argument of age. What we need to take cognizance of is the fact that President Robert Mugabe was democratically elected and he has a mandate to run the country up to 2018, and he has also a mandate to run the party up to 2019. And it is the responsibility of the members of ZANU-PF to make sure that they follow the constitution, that is the party constitution, in determining when our president, who is the President Robert Mugabe, has to leave. And for him to call members of ZANU-PF cowards on the basis of following the constitution is neither here nor there, because the basis of the president being in power at the moment is based on the fact that he was democratically elected, and the constitution of ZANU-PF provides that once the president has been elected in a Congress, lasts in power for as long as he is capable of running the country and the party. And one thing that almost everyone agrees, including Julius Malema, is the fact that President Robert Mugabe is a fearless and courageous leader who has stood the test of time, defending the country, defending the party, and leading the way for many other Pan-Africanists who would want to see their country changing in as far as the ownership of the resources and other things that have to do with the Africans in Africa. And also, we wish to remind everyone else who feels that President Mugabe should have stepped down, that it is because of the visionary attitude, as well as the way how he has run the country, that has seen many people responding to the land reform program and other programs that have put in place, not only in Zimbabwe, but which have resonated with all other Africans in Africa.
Mr. Mandaza, I hate to break your word, but Africa Diaspora Forum seems to have a different perspective. If we'll give you just a brief response.
Well, our response to the ZANU-PF spokesperson is that firstly, Mugabe has never been a Pan-Africanist. This is a man that presided over a genocide during the early 80s of our independence in Zimbabwe, Kuraundi, which massacred over 20,000 people. No Pan-Africanist can do that. ZANU-PF in character is a reactionary. It's a national bourgeoisie. In character, the national bourgeoisie is always in competition with imperialist forces, whereas the imperialist forces seek to loot our resources. They then fight, like Mugabe does, fight the imperialist forces to loot our resources, not to the advancement of the poor people of Zimbabwe. The looting of our diamonds, the looting of our resources characterizes the character, the political character of ZANU-PF. What Zimbabwe needs is not only Mugabe stepping down. We need a revolution to remove the entire ZANU-PF system in the country and usher in a government of the people that will not only...
Even if the people's choice is ZANU-PF, just a different or younger leader.
No. ZANU-PF is a system that must be removed.